Hi everyone, welcome to Kishore's podcast. Today, I have a big controversial topic for you, but I'm also curious to see how it resonates with you all. It's about building a negative sum career. Are you wondering what's negative sum career? Then stay with me for the next 10 minutes. Let's start with your regular work, which I would like to call a zero-sum game. Because you trade your time and energy on a daily basis to earn money. That's income, right? At the end of the month, so the bills can be paid. If you think little deeply, speaking of zero-sum game, you have long been conditioned to challenge and fight against this. Let me explain. As you continue to challenge more, you are only going to get lesser and lesser of your best version. Because as the work is inherently a zero-sum game, as we typically exchange time for money, and the time is always constant for everyone, and now any additional time that you spend on top in resisting this reality, it's just waste of time. Now, let's consider the notion of building a negative sum career. In this unconventional approach, you invest more than you take out of it. While this might sound foolish initially, but it holds a secret recipe that whoever you might think a successful individual is very well aware but rarely share or encourage. I have few examples, but only in fact very few had even publicly accepted it. For example, Elon Musk. Despite being a millionaire, he shared about the example when he had to sleep on the factory floor as he was building Tesla. Isn't that amazing? Maybe you also don't have to necessarily go for an inspiration looking out. For a moment, look inside your home. Think about your parents, our previous generation. I have an ask for you. Today, ask your parents, how many of them remember celebrating Mental Health Day at their workplace? I would be curious to know the answer. But I can also tell you, most likely they don't. Does that mean they never had any stressful days at work? Unlikely not. But they understood they were in a negative sum game, yielding results not just for themselves in the short run, but for their next generation. That's you and me. The results that we are reaping today, which is far beyond what we achieve today. In contrast to their times, many of us experience artificial stress at work because we strive to increase the sum in a zero-sum game. We desire work-life balance, instant gratification, the perks of promotion, lifestyle improvements, everything simultaneously. I have another example. If you are from India, I am sure you remember the infamous words from Infosys founder Mr. Narayana Murthy when he talked about 70-hour work week for Youth India. I remember very few endorsed it, but many in fact either contradicted or even attached a negative connotation to his words. And obviously, we all had missed the point. It's not about the number of hours. It's not about 70 or 90 hours work week. It's about the impact the mindset and the willingness to meet the demands connecting to the bigger purpose, very mean about the nation's economy. You need to accept first that we are forever in a negative sum game, benefiting not just yourselves, but the next generation. You might be doing this for your family, or for your organization, or the nations that you belong. It's always the long-term impact and the big picture matters most. Okay, for a moment, let's agree that one should work only 40 hours a week while respecting mental health. Now, can you name at least one founder or a top-level executive who doesn't work more than 40 hours per week because he or she religiously follows mental health? I hope you are not confusing between working long hours and the lack of flexibility. They both are not the same. I can assure you, the founders and the top-level executives live the best of both worlds. They enjoy the extreme flexibility despite working long hours. We, the millennials, often try to escape under the blanket of mental health is that we often abuse our non-working times with excessive digital device consumption. That's a luxury, or even I would call it an addiction, that our parents had never access to, and the so-called today's successful founders and top-level executives have no time to. When you realize this fact and focus on building a truly negative-sum career, connecting to the bigger purpose, I am sure none of you would feel any mental pressure. Because you start realizing the bigger purpose of what you do and why you do. Every founder and an executive working beyond 9 to 5 knows they are not just holding a work or a job that pays their bills. While that may be, but they fully know they are building a career, one that compounds interest on their returns. And most importantly, they are not just doing it for themselves. They do it for their entire community. They do it for their organization. They do it for their nation's economy. Now, what about some of you who might think you are neither a founder nor an executive? Especially for you, I have a book recommendation. That's my favorite book from redefining. It's called The Startup of You. Before you think startup, let me tell you, read. I've started this book with a core objective where he stated, you are all born as an entrepreneurs. All the human beings are born as an entrepreneurs. And at least founders of one startup, that's you. Yes, that's you. If you're building a company, that's you. Would you clock out at 5 p.m.? There is so much to do, isn't it? Work those extra hours. Work them, not just for yourself, but for the bigger purpose. When you work those extra hours, again, I'm repeating, it's not about the number of hours, but the impact that you're trying to create. And the means in which you invest to maximize the value of your time. As I said in the beginning, the time is constant for everyone. The key is, how do you maximize the value of your time? For example, invest in learning. Maybe I can share one of the personal experience. My mentor, who once told me, if I have nothing to add in my resume after every 3 months, then I must reconsider what I have been doing. It's simple, but profound. that made me to rethink. Since then, I have a calendar blocker in my calendar every 3 months to just reflect what has been my learning over the last quarter. So, include this daily routine of learning something new. Learn to upskill. Most importantly, learn to get things done. When you're building your own startup, whether it's a tech company, a bakery, or a freelance gig, you are the CEO. You are the visionary, janitor, marketer, late night troubleshooter, and everything. You hustle, you grind, and you lose sleep, obviously. Because your career breathes when you breathe, and it thrives when you obsess. And I'm sure it rewards you when you have sown enough seeds. Because you are the founder of your destiny. When you are the founder, the game isn't zero-sum. It's infinite. But for that, you need to be ready to start with negative sum deposits. The most important thing, remember, just like building any startup, success is never guaranteed with your career. Still, it's clearly about giving more than taking. That's why I call it a negative sum career. Talking about working those extra hours, let's not overlook the challenges posed by the gender gap. Traditionally, women tend to bear more burden with household day-to-day work. Now, with the increasing demand and the aspirations of our female workforce, reforms need to start at home, not just as policies at workplace. The policies at workplace are important, but they are also meaningless when there are no reforms at home. If you are someone aspiring to build a negative sum career with a bigger purpose, gender doesn't matter. And I sincerely wish it shouldn't matter. To be honest, speaking for myself, I do admit that there is definitely a lot to improve on my end. If you are a man listening to this episode from any part of the world who wants to build a career for yourself, let's support building a career for women at your home first by equally sharing the responsibilities in home. In the grand symphony of life, your career is your magnum opus. It's not about surviving, it's about composing a masterpiece. So my fellow dreamers, let's embrace this hustle. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Kishore's podcast. I do add this disclaimer for sure that the views that I have expressed in this podcast are solely mine and not endorsed by my employer. But if you are a friend, if you are a colleague or a mentee of mine, this would have been my honest recommendations. So until next time, remember to keep exploring, innovating, and embracing the possibility of tomorrow.